last Friday and discussed a project plan, and that has been sent out to all of the members of the subcommittee, and then also I sent it out to our other colleagues so that they feel free to offer any thoughts or comments or research that they do also. And one of the things that I did was I reached out to Paula Peters at the Wampanoag tribe, noting to her that we had seen in some recent newspaper articles her comments regarding the Truro seal, which shows a similar representation of a native person, which she described as inaccurate. So asked her in an email that I sent that the select board had asked us to look into the seal and would welcome her comments and amplification, if you will, of other imagery on the seal. And she wrote back to me yesterday and reconfirmed the lack of accuracy, and she said that she'd be willing to meet with us and discuss that further. So I sent out a follow-up email and asked if she would be available for our next subcommittee meeting, which is on Tuesday. So I'm waiting to hear back from that. So clearly Ms. Peters will give us some real important information and perspective for the subcommittee. So we're moving along. Anybody like to add anything else who's on the subcommittee?
I don't have anything else. I think that pretty much sums it up. We're just kind of all working on like some research individually that we're going to then bring back to the group. And I actually have our next, excuse me, our next meeting for the subcommittee on Friday the 5th, not Tuesday. Is that correct?
Oh. Okay, I'll correct that. Sorry.
That's okay. Okay, so that's what we're doing with that. We're going to keep working on that, and we'll update everybody when we have more info. The next thing that we need to do, we just need to come up with a date that we'd all like to meet to go over the brainstorming, to kind of revisit the brainstorming session that we had, a while ago, and see if we can target some projects and things like that. Some people have shown interest in doing certain things, so we wanted to kind of keep that separate from our regular meeting and just have a specific meeting to go over those things. So if everybody can just maybe look at their schedule. I know this week we have our meeting today. Next week we're doing a seal subcommittee on Friday, and then our next regular meeting is on February 11th. So if we maybe want to try to fit something in between the 5th and the 11th so that we can go over it again on our regular meeting, that would work. So if anybody has a day or anything in mind, just let me know what you think might work. Maybe we could do Tuesday. Tuesday didn't work out for me. Well, let me know what you guys think if you have a day that works.
For the 11th.
Wednesday works fine for me.
Wednesday the 10th,
Wednesday the 10th.
Bob?
Wednesday the 10th. That
Yeah,
work for everybody?
Works for me.
10th works for me too.
Jack? Okay.
We could
Melanie,
do.
would the 10th work for you? Karen?
Julie, I just want to confirm that this is something you're going to consider a regular meeting. It's going to be more than a quorum of members. So we'll have to post the meeting. And what I'd love to do is if somebody can volunteer, with it being an extra meeting, we'll check our workload, but we may need help with minutes because the number of meetings is really accumulating and it's difficult to keep up.
Got it. Okay.
Thank you.
George, I know you did a lot of really good note taking in our last brainstorm sessions. Would you be willing to continue that as in the form of like minutes for a brainstorm meeting?
For the brainstorming,
Yes.
sure, I'll do that.
Okay. Does anybody have any conflicts with the 10th? Melanie?
I have a meeting at 1:15. That's all
Okay, so if we did a 10 o'clock, that'd be okay?
for me.
Okay. All right, so why don't we put that down, everybody? So Wednesday, February 10th, 10 a.m. for a brainstorming meeting.
Yes.
Okay. Good. Next, we would like to go over anything updating on the Judah Baker windmill. Is there anything? I feel like we kind of went over that last time.
No updates on that one.
Okay, great. Or we know we have some updates on the farm. Who would like to, Jack, would you like to go over that, the updates on the farm?
Would you like us to review I think that Grace forwarded out an update on the CPC application. That may make sense to run through that. And Jeff Colby is here as well. I'm happy to share my screen, Grace. Jeff, if that's helpful. So Jeff and I have been continuing work on the application. CPC had asked a number of questions. We've been moving forward with coastal engineering on the structural improvements that are needed, and I think that Jeff can run through what those items are. I do think it's, we had a conversation, and this ties into the Baxter Gristmill as well, regarding kind of level of expectation with these projects. And what we've really tried to do is break these into the most, I don't know, these are really safety driven and public access for the structures, and really trying to shore them up, trying also to keep to a budget to help facilitate the projects being able to move forward with relative expedience, I guess is the word I would use. So I'm happy to share my screen, and Jeff, if you have anything more to add while I'm sharing, I can pull up the plans. Does that make sense, Jeff?
Yeah, that'd be great. I think that was a
Okay.
great summary that you just did, Karen, with regard to kind of the approach and where we are. We did have a very productive meeting with Coastal and a historic architect that John Bologna brought along last week. That was very helpful in kind of reviewing some more of the details for this site. Karen summed it up by saying that this phase or this piece of the work is for safety and public access, and I think that's a great way to talk about this. But it also will address kind of the more costly and some of the components that might be unknown, because some of that is below ground and excavation relative to a new foundation. So the key components of this piece are a new foundation, and I think you have, or we certainly can send if you don't have, the 50% design plans. They're in your packet here that Coastal has submitted. And what these plans call for, this particular sheet here, I believe, is existing conditions, but one of the other sheets that they've submitted here at this 50% design stage, and again, 50% is very early. There's a lot of work that still needs, but the major components of this are a new foundation, some work on the retaining walls that you can see, and this is a good one right here, Karen, that you can see on the left-hand portion. There's some existing retaining walls that come out from the entrance to the basement level. That would get reworked. Right now, there's 3 different areas of foundation, if you will. There's a crawl space. Yeah, that's good to kind of zoom out on that a little bit. There's a crawl space in the middle. There's kind of a utility space on the bottom of this plan, if you will. I don't know that this is oriented north-south specifically, but certainly there's an area of a utility space, a crawl space, and then a more open space. The intent here would be to, when the foundation is replaced, to have that all be open and available. The association has a desire to use that space for storage, and have a big open area would certainly facilitate that. There is a current opening in the space that is to the bottom of the diagrams for hatch access, for utility access, for the association's kind of workspace to get down below. That won't be necessary anymore if the whole basement is accessible. So we had some discussions about not framing in that hatch. And speaking of framing, that's the next piece of it. Not only is it a foundation replacement with a piece of the foundation being shelved on the outside, so as to facilitate adding a stone facing to make that historic look to it. But it is also framing for the whole first floor deck, so what sits right on the foundation. There is a diagram, Karen, that shows that in the proposed. That is maybe be able to do it on a cross section. Yeah, right there. That's probably a pretty good one. That's a good one. Yeah, kind of showing the typical wall sections that are being proposed, and the deck that's being placed on top of that foundation. Also, what Karen's pointing to right now with her cursor is kind of how that deck will connect to the first floor framing. Right now, there are some posts that need to be completely replaced, and Coastal will be identifying those on future iterations of this plan. But there are some pieces that are in relatively good shape and can be connected to that first floor deck that would be replaced. The reason the first floor deck needs to be replaced is because that is not designed for the type of loading and the type of use that the barn gets. It's a very kind of historic framing in the sense that it's very wide open. It has some, the current code is not, certainly not met with the structure that's out there. And so the proposed 2x12 framing of that first floor deck would allow for assembly loading, which is essentially what they do when they have an event there, and they have people in that are, gathering to, be in the building to look at displays or to buy baked goods or those types of things they do, as well as store the tractor. So that first floor framing is a key structural safety public access component, as we talked about before. So those are the two kind of major components with regards to the plans at this point. We still expect that we would be able to stay within the $300,000 estimated budget that we have now, but we need to take these plans or a small additional tweak that Coastal is going to do to these plans and go to a cost estimating firm within the next few weeks to make sure we're still on schedule to meet that that requirement, to try to stay within that budget. So that's we'll take care of, again, the more safety and public access components, and is something that if we keep the project manageable, we can stay within that budget that I just mentioned. So, that's kind of the general overview. I'm sure we can answer any questions. Carrie, do you have anything you want to add to that?
No, I think that we talked on site, anticipating the archaeology question that'll come up. And we talked on site, and what I'd be curious to hear from the committee, I did take time with Grace to go back and look at the studies and findings, I guess reports, if you will, that were produced by Craig Chartier over the 6 or 7. I was surprised to be reminded of how many different digs we've had on site and how much funding we've actually put into it. It's close to $150,000 that we've spent on archaeological digging on site. It's quite a bit. So I think that when the work is being done, they will need to dig around. I don't know whether or not there is one comprehensive map of where test pits had been done, whether additional testing is needed or if observation just while the work is being done is kind of a good strategy here, given how much other archaeological digging we've done on site. What more are we going to do? I think that this was included in the what's the disturbed area on some of the sites. So be interested in hearing your feedback on that. We certainly, you know, I'm hoping that observation is a good strategy here because additional work would require additional time and it may set the project back further. What else?
Yeah, Karen, on the excavation, I wanted to get a sense from Coastal and their representatives of kind of what that would look like. And they will be diagramming that a little bit better, but what they indicated
Right.
at our on-site meeting that was approximately 6 feet from the foundation is where they would need to be in order to excavate down properly lift the building, remove the foundation and amount of material that's under the foundation to properly install the footings and the walls that are necessary. So certainly there's a focus to try to minimize that disruption, but a good expectation would be approximately 6 feet out from the foundation would need to be excavated.
That's what I recall as well, Jeff. No, I think that's it. I'm looking at my notes from our visit. I think it's good progress. But I'd be interested to hear any questions the committee has. I think we certainly want your support moving forward. I think CPC is looking for that from you guys.
George, go ahead.
Thank you, Karen and Jeff. This is a quantum leap forward to save this historic gem. Thank you very much for all your time and hard work. And Karen, a few thoughts on the archaeology piece, and Jack, please jump in. I would think that we would need to submit a document to MHC, given that this is on the National Register, and indicating that this work is coming up. And you're right, Karen. A couple of options, observation being one, I worked for a day or so down at the Atwood Historic House a couple of years ago, and they were redoing the basement and the flooring, and what we did there, and Craig Shadia did that, was once the soil was dug out, we did sifting and testing of the soil, and granted, given that a lot of the area there has been disturbed, it would be difficult to actually do a true analysis. So that's one of the options also. And Jack, suggestion that we get in touch with Craig and see if he can put further granularity into any of the test pits that were done in and around the barn. So that's a few thoughts.
George, can I ask you, what do you mean by that? Further granularity into what's been done?
Well, for looking at, he can look at his documents and make sure that we have I think you'd suggested the extensive documentation of all the test pits that were done and the proximity to.
Just as an aside, is there one map with all, when I go through all the different reports, there's individual, and Grace can help me because I'm trying to see the codes in my head. We can see where the test pits were done. We can see there was something found. There was something either historic or prehistoric. And then there's some that were, nothing was found.
Mm-hmm.
I think those were the the different criteria. But is there one map for the site?
Jack's been there since the get-go.
Only historic times.
No,
I'll
even
try to
before
answer-
that.
I'll try to answer your questions, Karen. I don't know if there is a single map that shows every single test pit. I know, I bet a mortgage payment that there are a series of maps that show every single test pit, and whether they are historic, prehistoric, or zero. They're there in all of those reports that were done over 6 or 7 seasons. Craig would be the person to go to ask if there is a single map that shows all the test pits.
We can try to line up the existing maps, like you said, that are in each report, but
You could go there. I would pay particular attention to the second, I believe it's the second to last dig. It's either the last or the second to last dig, which came closest to the barn. My recollection is that there were not test pits dug around the perimeter, the immediate perimeter of the barn building, like was done over at the farmhouse. I know we came close a couple of times because they found what might have been an earlier barn to that from soil evidence, but there wasn't test pits done the same way around the farmhouse, which in the end combined professionally dug test pits and a technique that George just mentioned, in which you basically do a salvage dig. You get the contractor who's digging up around the foundation just to pile all the dirt that comes out in one place, and then you get a bunch of volunteers to do brute force screening on it. And that worked pretty well over at the farmhouse. A lot of artifacts came out of that kind of approach. Karen, on the 150,000 or so, when you put it all together, it sure is a lot of money, and we're grateful that community preservation did that for the farm. The amount of money spent immediately around the barn itself is probably, a sixth or a seventh of that. And the other question George brought up, Karen, I think brought up too, I would defer to MHC to determine, get a determination of whether or what type of survey work needs to be done before any construction gets underway. That's, it's a National Register property. Archaeological digs have been done before. We have found Native American stuff within 50 to 100 feet of the building. So I defer to MHC, and then I think the town commission can have its own opinion after we hear from MHC. That's it. That's it on the archaeology part of it. I have a couple other questions, but I can wait on those.
All right, Jack, thank you. We'll go to Grace, and then you can come back to your questions.
Just for just small clarification, the west perimeter of the barn, I don't know how well we're going to be able to see this, had an entire dig done for testing sites. So it would really, the southern part of the barn is right on Bray Farm Road, and then the east and north are the other two that are flush to soil. So I just wanted that to be known, that the entire west side of the barn has been test pitted, and there's a report on that as well.
Grace, can you go over that again? The west side of the barn. Okay, on the side. All right. Okay, I just want to make sure on the side that.
But
the side that has done where the lower entrance is. That I just want to make sure we're talking about the same side, right?
Yep.
Okay. That's a grid pattern test search, which is basically a broad survey technique. It doesn't necessarily rule out additional survey work.
Jack, did you have further questions? Okay. You said you had some other questions? You good?
I'm sorry it took so long trying to keep the mute off and on. If we're done with archaeology, I do have a couple of other general questions, but I like I said, if anybody else got, I can wait. Or just go ahead.
I mean, are they related to the farm and the barn?
The barn, yeah, just the overall status of the barn.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, in no particular order. Jeff, you mentioned, and the diagrams show that the lower level entrance area, that wall is going to be taken down as part of the rehab work. What's the plan for that entrance level at the end of the day?
Well, that's a good question. That is actually something we gave Coastal a little bit of feedback to in our meeting. Currently, these 50% design plans, which you have a copy of, shows that lower wall being replaced with a concrete wall. We talked with them about reusing some of the stones to do some kind of similar short walls. They're not holding back a lot of material, but use those with stones that are reused from the site in a more traditional format. So that's something they're looking into. And I think that would be easy enough to do. We're not going to be able to rebuild the foundation with the stones because of current code requirements, but those retaining walls might be able to be reconstructed using the stones from the site. So that's the hope, and we'll find out more from Coastal on their next iteration of the plans whether that was possible.
That's great. I'm glad to hear that. I think that reusing the stones is certainly, and other people have their opinion, but that would be my number one priority. Concrete walls, I can't see any circumstances where I would be in favor of concrete walls there. It's probably the least expensive way to go, but I don't think it's the right way to go. Okay, that's a good answer though. I had a general question. I had asked before the meeting, is there a copy of an updated coastal assessment that would take into account the period between the assessment they did at the end of 2018 and today? And I guess I'm not sure whether that was done or not. The assessment judgments for the 2018 study described the building as in fair to poor condition and had a really extensive list of short and long-term repairs, rehab work. And one of the things that Coastal underlined in that 2018 report was that the structure was so vulnerable to, critters and water entry and just general rot and deterioration, that it raised in my mind what is the condition of this building now at the beginning of 2021 versus the description that was provided to us at the end of 2018. Somebody, I think Jeff, it was you, raised the question of hidden damage. That's a bugbear, especially when it comes to cost estimating of the repairs here. But I know Coastal was over there toward the end of last year, and they were looking at temporary repairs for the awful condition of that north wall. Did they do a written assessment that would be considered an update of the 2018 report that contains, judgments about how salvageable is the building?
Well, Karen probably has, she can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe we asked Coastal to do a formal update to that. It was a review with them on a couple of occasions now from the end of 2020 until, just last week, of making sure that we have done all the necessary immediate shoring up of the structure. And Karen's showing a couple pictures right now that have been done. So we met with Coastal before, I think at the roughly November timeframe that you're talking about. We met with them then, had our facilities crew come in and do some shoring. Then Coastal came back and reconfirmed that our temporary measures were sufficient for the time being. And anything else more longer term is going to be incorporated in their plans that they're working on. They did identify some things that need to be done to specifically address the water intrusion that you mentioned, as well as some of the other structural issues that will be identified on the final version of the plans. And so that's in the works.
Okay, but you know, I think you can read between the lines. My concern is that there's a likelihood, given all those intrusions to the building envelope, of additional damage over the last 2 years. And I just wanted to make sure that we've got an outfit like Coastal who can address the structural, assess the structural condition of the building, so that we're moving ahead with, you know, the best estimate we can come up with. That was I guess I was really taken by the 2018 report and the conditions that were reported there, and really, I'm glad we're moving ahead with all of this. And I was glad to hear you say too that, Jeff, that you were going to be looking at whether that 300K is going to hold up to what the actual conditions are in the barn right now. So that's my questions. I think you've answered them. Thank you.
Okay, great. I just want to add, if I could, that we are going to do some cost estimation before we go out to bid to make sure we're online, I think, addressing your concerns, as well as, you know, $300,000 is a lot of money, but we're also planning for a healthy contingency within that for some of those unforeseen things that might come up during construction, because there's always those things that come up.
Great. Jeff, thank you for the answers to those questions. Karen, you expressed a little while ago that you were hoping for our support for the project. Are you looking for us to maybe do a vote to support and include a letter that would help, or is that?
Yeah, I don't, and you know, I'd look at George too as the CPC representative. George, you weren't at the last meeting for CPC. Jeff and I basically gave, I think, the same rundown, Jeff. We have a little bit more information now since we had the on-site meeting with Coastal. But CPC, you know, we haven't gotten to the Baxter Gristmill yet. They voted the Baxter Gristmill to move forward with the up to $75,000 amount. But what we didn't secure was a vote from CPC on the up to $300,000 for Taylor Bray Farms. So kind of if you know, I think a note saying you met with us, you know, had the update and you're supportive of the efforts and would recommend the $300,000, just a reconfirmation of the application, I think. Does that make sense, George?
It does, and I did watch the replay of the CPC meeting. So
yeah, great, thank you.
And what you know, what I had requested back in November were project plans, a little more fleshed out and detailed for both projects, and those have been submitted. So so I think it's appropriate to send, you know, a reconfirmation after today's meeting to the CPC saying that that, you know, you and Jeff have come before us and presented, and the questions have been answered, and you have our wholehearted support.
Thank you. That would be great. Jeff, can you think of anything else?
I think that's it for this project.
Super.
Jack, go ahead.
Just for clarification, so that we all know, is the amount of money we're talking about here is, if my memory's working correctly, so it's up to 300K as the current ask. And am I correct in remembering that there's a $50,000 figure here too that's already been granted by CPC, kind of a design and engineering project? Can someone answer that, please?
I can answer that. The previous appropriation was $50,000. So that's the funding that we've used to hire Coastal for the current scope of work. There's a balance. I can look it up. I think that their contract right now is $22,000, something like that, maybe 25. So we have a balance, but we may need it for the things that Jeff has mentioned, including like the cost estimation, any, the archaeological stuff. If there's anything we need to do, anything more we need to pay. I don't know if there's other items, Jeff, site plans.
A site plan or survey might be necessary, right?
Right. We're hoping to find one on hand. We always try to do it on the cheap.
Is that 50K? Would some of that be available if MHC recommends some more intense look right around the immediate foundation area?
I'd have to look at the scope of the article, Jack, as drafted. I'd hope so, but I'd have to look at the scope of the article as voted at the town meeting. So I don't know. I don't know, and I don't know, but we'd hope. We'll look into it for sure, but we may not have money. So.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that I'm pretty sure that MHC will ask for something. I'm not sure what, but I think
Hopefully it's the lowest cost thing. And I think honestly, the question that I have, being totally honest with you, because I'm going to be totally honest. I just want to I want the foundation repaired. I want the structure sound so that it doesn't further deteriorate. So I think part of the question is what are we required to do and what might be a nice to have? And then I think it's a conversation for the Historic Commission.
well, I'll just say that's right. I would agree with that. I would just add to it that when you disturb soils, you only have one shot at it.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we've had that. Okay, that's it. I'm not going to do my ready, fire, aim comments.
George, go ahead.
Just a couple of things, and Karen, correct me if I'm off base, but given that we're at the 50% level, and we have time before the April town meeting, that clearly the budget is still in a state of flux. And the CPC has clearly gone on record that this is a very important project to the CPC and the town. So Jack, I think to your point, as things flesh out more, that the number could come up and be brought to the CPC for final vote. Karen, am I accurate on that?
I think there is flexibility with CPC. I do think the $300,000, and Jeff, I'd ask you to chime in. $300,000 is kind of the internal budget that we've set in order to facilitate the procurement requirements associated with the project. So if we are going over $300,000, I think it's safe to say the project will take a good deal longer. Is that accurate, Jeff?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. There are some, municipal procurement requirements that Karen just alluded to that are triggered at various thresholds, and we need to be careful about, what we do and stay within the requirements of those. So right now, we don't expect the way the project is structured to have any filed sub bids or any of those other challenges that would take longer. Of course, this is a prevailing wage project because it's a municipal project. So there are some of those things that we need to deal with and add to the cost. But we're trying to work within the system that we have, knowing that there's going to be some things that are necessary in a follow-on effort, but they might be more cosmetic in nature and less focused on safety and public access.
I think George, we tried to convey that same message to the CPC because CPC, I think, I appreciate the idea of having a project and taking care of it, soup to nuts. And this is a practical approach that will require going back to get the, additional gussy up funds that, gussy up is not a technical term, obviously, that to cover the additional costs of desired improvements.
Sure. And then
Just speak slower.
And one final point, I think, Jack's point on the MHC is a valid one, and that clearly we don't have numbers now, but I think what Jack's suggestion, and I agree with him, I suggest we put a placeholder for unknown MHC costs, whether it's $2,000 or 2,500, just something as a placeholder, so it's a line item that we have visibility to, that there may be some costs associated with that.
Grace?
Can I just go ahead? No, Grace, go ahead.
I might have to piggyback off what you say. I think I have an idea of what, if it's archaeology based, I don't want to say my regulatory. There you go.
Okay.
All right, I was just going to say, in terms of kind of getting at least a ballpark idea about MHC, George, didn't CPC grant a small award to Historic New England for something similar for archaeology survey work around Winslow Crocker House? And my recollection is it might have been $10,000 or $11,000 as a cost estimate. The point of all of this is, and I think to underline what George is saying by putting a line item in for MHC, is that there are time and cost questions, obviously. The cost question is right there in front of our face. We don't know what that would be. The time question, I just wanted to remind everybody, any kind of archaeology work done on municipal property anywhere requires an MHC permit, and that becomes a time question. You have to apply for the permit. They have their set amount of time to respond to processing the permit, that kind of stuff. So if this is a high priority to get work underway, like springtime, just looking at the timeline that we passed out earlier, the faster we engage with MHC, the better. Maybe it's something that Grace can do to get it rolling, to call Ed Bell, but I defer to others on that one.
Okay, so for the archaeology component, I have just a couple questions about why we think MHC would be triggered outside of willingly doing a archaeological survey. Because just because something's listed on the National Register doesn't mean that it necessarily triggers MHC unless something from the earlier reports indicated such going forward with any restoration work. So that's what I'm confused about, because I don't know if this is something that we just want to do in good faith because we feel as though it's right to do with a foundational work, or it's something that we feel as though on a regulatory review process with the Commonwealth and perhaps even the federal government that we're triggered to do, because those are two very different things. So I'm just trying to understand, because when I engage with MHC, I just want to have a full background of what has happened going forward.
I think the answer to that question about why MHC's interest would be triggered is, to me, it would be less on the National Register status, unless it had a specific archaeological dimension, and would be more focused on the existing record of finding evidence of historic or prehistoric archaeological resources in the immediate vicinity of the area to be disturbed. And the farm is just loaded with those things. One thing, for instance, that paved area, the driveway coming in from the street, who knows what's under that? You just never know what you're going to find. One of the most important finds in the several seasons of digs at the farm was a Native American cache pit, which was discovered within 3 feet of the paved Bray Farm Road North section. So that's just an example. I think, Grace, the thing when you call, if you would call, talk to Ed Bell, he's going to be more interested in the existing archaeological record than he is with the National Register status. How much he's going to be interested, that's a separate question.
Okay, because on a regulatory review, if you go to restore something, so there's a difference between
Oh,
structural restoration and setting, pretty much. So the landscape that's there.
yeah.
So I get, like I said, my question is that if we go forward with the restoration project, whether or not we have to file with MHC, because
I think, yeah, I see what you're getting at.
you know, it's a regular, I just need, that's my question, because again, if there's something in good faith, that's something going forward where we need to, you know, start discussing as we have now, different line items within a budget. And then if it's something that we are regulatorily mandated by, that's quite another.
Yeah, I see what you're getting at. The difference between the structure and the ground itself. That it?
Yeah, because if you go to restore the barn, that's completely separate unless dictated otherwise. I'm not going to pretend that I'm an expert on archaeology. I'm not, as a preservationist at all. That's something that I'm working knowledge, and I very well might be ignorant to some other fashion here. But again, that's the component, is that if we are, you know, triggered on a
It might be that Old Kings Highway is more interested in what we're planning for the barn than MHC is. I don't know. What do you think?
What do you mean though, as an interest, as just purely as a stakeholder or legally bounded?
Well, does a renovation of repairs to the barn come under? Is that something that Old Kings Highway would be interested in?
It would trigger their jurisdiction.
Well, is that another bureaucratic checkpoint in this work that needs to be considered?
Yep, because it's an alteration.
Yeah. Well, sorry to raise that, but it's I didn't invent the OKC regulations, but if
Jack, we knew this was coming. It's, you know, it's in Old Kings Highway. So that's not a surprise. So,
okay,
don't worry, no worries.
I'm not worried about it. I'm just trying to address Grace's question about how's MHC going to, what's the best way to ask? What, you know, it's always a situation where you have to ask the right question. And the right question, I think, to MHC from the archaeology standpoint is to focus on the part about what's been found on the property in past professional archaeological digs, what's been documented, and what we're planning to do.
And my other question is with the finding of Native American, because as far as I know, I'm, you know, getting up to speed on the last few years of what's happened. Native American artifacts were found in those, correct?
Yeah, I mean, we found Native American artifacts under the farmhouse.
And was the Commission of Indian Affairs ever involved in that? Because that's another question as well.
No, it's a straightforward. If MHC determines that work needs to be done, they will require a permit. That's I can't think of any circumstances once they make the determination that work needs to be done where they will not require a permit, and that's simply because it's government-owned property. City, state.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is all good. So when I connect with MHC, I have a better idea of what's going on. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, thank you. So I think the last thing we just would like to do here on the farm is get a motion to get a letter for Karen to go forward with our support. So I guess I can make a motion that the Yarmouth Historic Commission is in support of the projects being worked on at the barn and at the farm, and whatever she said about, you know, upgrading to the 300K, and we are obviously fully in support of the project. If anybody else wants to adjust my words.
I'll second it.
Right there. All right, 5 seconds. I'm just going to roll a call for a vote. So George?
Aye.
Melanie? Yes. Jack?
Aye.
Kathy?
Aye.
and Bob Heisel.
Aye.
All right, so majority, our motion has passed. If Grace can put together a letter for us and get it to Karen for our support. All right, and Jeff, thank you for coming today, and Karen also. Thanks for the updates. Okay.
Julie, would you like to move on to Baxter Gristmill?
Yes, please.
We won't go anywhere. Hold on.
All right, that's our next thing. So
yeah, this one is similar to the Taylor Bray Farm, and that CPC had asked for updates. We you received from Grace the an update kind of report, if you will, in advance. I can pull that up on the screen. This one CPC did review and, as I mentioned earlier, voted to move forward with the $75,000 uptick. Baxter Gristmill, again, we're focusing on safety and public access. Jeff, I can share my screen, and then I'll give the floor to you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, the details on Baxter Gristmill, again, it's a similar approach as Karen mentioned, with safety and public access being the primary concerns. Right now, there has been some temporary measures taken with 2x4s and 2x6s to kind of prop up the second floor. I think you may have seen some of the pictures associated with that. If not, we can certainly get this to you. But temporary measures have been taken to preserve the building before some of these other things can be undertaken. But the coastal report indicated, yeah, Karen's pointing to some of the temporary measures have been taken now. Even that door in place has been screwed in, so it can't just be, opened up easily, because we really don't want people in the structure at this point until it's more stabilized. But the primary components, and there were 4 of them detailed in the coastal report, I think that's part of your packet as well, but is the sill beams as well as the sill plates. Those are the areas that that contact the foundation, the stone foundation, that is exposed now. There's some tar paper covering that after Coastal and Andy Schrake did their investigations, but that area is part of what's being replaced. And so what Karen has on the screen here is the first item, and that's primarily the sills. Coastal identified in this report some very detailed areas that really need to be replaced, but as you can see from some of those measurements, that's the majority of that. So we've just made the decision in the budget estimate to budget for full replacement of the beams as well as the sill plates that rest on the foundation. There have been some discussions with the building department as to what would be required. So Coastal, this report is very detailed, but Coastal is going to be doing some plans that show in a little more detail how that sill plates and beams interact with the foundation, how they meet the code requirements, the current building code requirements. So some of that's still in the works, but we're comfortable that within the budget that we have, that as Karen mentioned, CPC voted to support within the 75,000, that we can accomplish those things that we need to do. The other significant component, and the reason for the temporary shoring that you saw within those previous pictures, was the carrying beam above the door that supports that whole, second floor, first floor, the first floor that's above grade. That beam needs to be completely replaced. That's rather expensive, but that is the second major component of the work. So there is another short corner beam, I think it's only 4 feet long, that needs to be replaced, was identified in Coastal's report. But those things total up to something that's just above $50,000. And the difference between Andy Schrake's budget estimate and Coastal report identified work is a healthy contingency. So just like the Taylor Bray Farm project, we're looking, Karen, could you go back for a moment to that previous picture by the water? I just wanted to point out to the commission some of that work. So, they're going to be replacing all of the sill beams as well as this. So the fourth item is this carrying beam that goes across the sluiceway here. That'll be completely replaced as well. So as you can clearly see, there's a lot of deterioration there, and it's all structural support for the building. That's all part of the work that's going to be done under this budget. But as I was getting ready to say, there's a healthy contingency in place on top of the estimate that Andy has given us for this project. So Karen's just identifying some of those numbers now, but a contingency of approximately $20,000 because you never know what you're going to find after you jack the building up slightly in order to replace those sill beams and plates. Is there something else we come into contact with? We're pretty comfortable with what needs to be done from what we've seen so far, but as you expose more things, who knows? So we have a healthy contingency in there as well. But again, the approach to this project was safety, public access. We'll be able to, once this work is done, take down that temporary shoring and again, have people that can walk through the structure. Right now, we don't feel like having anybody in there is a safe condition currently. So that's the approach. We know there's going to be some follow-on work that's necessary. I think Karen in her update memo did a great job of identifying the things that we're hearing from all of the different stakeholder groups of things that need to be done in follow-on efforts. And we're certainly, keeping a list of those types of things, but that's going to have to be done in another effort after we get a better handle on the structural issues of the building. Karen, is there anything else you want to add to that?
No, I think, Jeff, you did a good job. I just wanted to show folks, I'm sure you've seen it in the memo, but this is a list of things that, we're suggesting that the Historic Commission could consider in moving forward. And Julie, you mentioned the brainstorming meeting. This is the type of thing, and I think that what will be important too is prioritization of kind of the different projects. But this is a list of things. Some of these were included in Andy Schrake's list, the additional building upgrades to the electrical service inside and out. And we did just improve the, I think we've upgraded the alarm system that's in place there. Jeff, you can confirm, but replacing the doors with period frames and doors, replacing the window frames, the siding, the roof. And then of course there's that turbine indoors. And dealing with that. And then I threw this in, site improvements such as interpretive signage. These are things that we've talked about in terms of, if the goal is to address Baxter Gristmill and making it more visitable and more attractive to visitors and that kind of thing, these are some suggestions. I'm sure you guys have a lot more ideas than I do. So.
Thanks, Karen. Yeah, definitely. I believe we had some things that we were discussing in our brainstorming regarding the gristmill. So I'm sure we'll just keep on with that, and having this is good for reference. Right. Bob, Kelly, do you have something?
I just wanted to quickly say that George has a contact that has an old pump that I think came out of that mill or came out of a similar mill that's in excellent condition, and it would be advantageous to kind of frame that thing into some kind of a plexiglass enclosure or something and actually display it inside the mill. So that's one thing that I'd just like to throw out there.
Thanks. All right, well, we will continue to discuss the gristmill. I know we've definitely been talking about signage, so that's something that we know we all want to do and get on to different locations in town, and the gristmill is definitely one of them. So again, Jeff and Karen, thank you for your updates for both the farm and the gristmill. George, go ahead.
So similar to the motion that was made to send to the CPC on the farm, I make motion that we do the same here for the Baxter Gristmill, to let the CPC know that that the YHC fully supports all of the work that's planned for the Baxter Gristmill.
Thank you, George.
A second.
Kathy seconds. All right, I'm going to do roll call for approval. Melanie?
Yes.
Yes. Jack?
Aye.
Bob Kelly?
Aye.
And Bob Hyslop.
Aye.
All right. We're all in favor. Pass that motion, and we'll get a letter for that as well. Thanks, George. All right. Next, we're going to go to archaeology and some updates on the MHC grant. Jack, if you can update us on that.
Grace and I are working on the two main elements of this. I'm wordsmithing the narrative section. Grace is taking care of the scope of work. We'll meet our deadline. The muse is escaping me, but I'm capturing it back. I should have a draft ready on, if I say it out loud, I'll have my own self-imposed deadline. I hope by Monday I'll have something ready. Grace?
Grace, did you have anything to add?
No, I've just been working as much as I can too.
Okay.
Get it in. We need that in by next week.
Awesome.
There's just one thing to add, just so, because I don't know how to do this, but and Karen, I hope your ears are alert to this. There are 3 annexes or appendices, A, C, and D, that might require some budget numbers, and I hope that you can help Grace and I on that, getting those filled in, because they have to go forward as part of the package.
I'm following along, and I'll chime in as much as I can as well. I have your drafts. I have a pile now. It's official.
I do too.
Great. All right. Is there any other community preservation updates besides the farm and the gristmill?
Yes, I have.
Yeah,
So I just wanted to give an update again to the Commission on the historic applications that are going to be presented at the annual meeting. And we've discussed these before, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on them. Just, you know, if there's any specific questions, but you can see that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you know, 6 projects. So busy year, but all is good. Any questions? Thank you.
All right. Thanks, George.
And just one more thing, quick. In that vein, this is, if you recall, the Cultural Center has requested as part of their CPC grant to replace 3 of the doors. On the doors they're looking to replace is the front entrance that was constructed in the 1850s. So this is a look in, and this is a look from the outside. And what they're asking to do is to replace this with matching French doors. And this is on the inside looking out. And what you can see is that there are hinges on the left side here that are indicative of.
Can't see what you're sharing.
George, was there something you wanted to show? Do you want to share your screen, or?
Yeah, you can't see this?
No.
Oh, then hold on. Yeah. So, all right, I'm sorry, share screen, that's it.
Yeah. Oh, there we go.
Thank you, I thought I had it up.
Okay.
So, so again, you know, the upper left is the main entrance, which aluminum entry doors replaced in the 1950s. So looking out, you can see that on the jamb to the left, there are 3 areas where there are hinges. And then also in the top and the bottom, there are sash keyholes. So I know we were looking for definitive photos on, you know, these doors, but what you can see here is that that this evidence gives credence that the doors prior to 1950 were, again, a French door. So that's door number one. Door number two is the side entrance, which is an entrance to an addition to the building that was, again, part of the 1950s construction. So they're looking to replace this door. And then the last door is on the rear, facing east. This structure, again, was built in the 1950s, and it's an entrance down into the basement. So, so those are the three doors that they'd like to replace.
Perfect. Thank you, George. Okay. Does anybody have anything else? Basically, we're just on to any staff reports or correspondence, and then or other business.
Can I just have a question?
Of course.
How does the commission want to proceed? I had mentioned at the CPC meeting that I present this to the commission, and then the commission will make a decision on the appropriateness of replacing the doors.
Okay. I mean, I think we've all kind of looked at this before, and I'm glad that we now have more definitive photos that show the original placement of the doors. Does anybody have any questions about it, or any reason why we shouldn't support this change?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Is there a prototype, an engineer's drawing, anything that, like for the French doors, that shows what the replacement would look like?
At this time, the Cultural Center do not have that. They have requested, a number of quotes and bids, but they haven't received architectural drawings as of yet.
Okay, thanks.
Could we do a vote in approval of the project with the contingency that we would like to see the samples of whatever door they pick, so that we can make sure that they're historically accurate?
I make a motion that we move ahead on the project with the contingency of the drawings.
Great.
Second.
Kathy's going to second. All right, I'm going to roll call for a vote. George?
Yes.
Melanie?
Yes.
Jack?
Aye.
And Bob Heislip?
Yes.
And I approve as well. So, okay, so that motion has passed. If we can get another letter, Grace, for giving me a lot of work today, over to CPC for the Cultural Center doors. All right, thanks, George, for the update on that.
Welcome.
All right, does anybody have anything else that we need to discuss today? So just to review our upcoming meetings, we have, make sure I have my dates right. So Friday, February 5th, we have another SEAL subcommittee meeting at 10. Then we're going to do a brainstorming meeting on Wednesday, February 10th, also at 10. And then our next regular meeting will be Thursday, February 11th at 10 as well. Oh, Grace, go ahead.
Also coming up, I just had a application from 14 Homer Avenue. They're looking to just do what seems so far just a small restoration project, similar to actually 9 Homer in the design of a barn style structure on the property. So I will be distributing that, and then that can be held at our next regular meeting, and I'll invite the applicant just so everybody knows to look for that.
Perfect, sounds good, thank you. And I want to thank Grace and Karen. You guys have been doing a lot of extra work for us these past couple of months. We seem to be super busy with a lot of different projects. So thank you. Art. Okay,
Thank you.
I'm going to, can we make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay. We all just do a little hand wave that we're all going to approve or adjourning. Okay, thank you. Everybody have a nice couple days. We'll see you all soon.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Stay safe.
Bye.